Guardian. The Cold Night of Loyalty. Chapter 1. The Streets of the Silent Man. Mornings in Cordoba are veiled in a cool mist at first light. The pavements are damp, the walls silent, and the air seems to carry the weight of nights gone by. As the city slowly awakens, some people are already up but remain invisible. They live at the edges of sidewalks, in the shadows of abandoned buildings, behind trash containers. Everyone knows they exist, but no one looks them in the eye. On the outskirts of this city, at the entrance of a long-abandoned post office building, there was an old man who woke up in the same spot every morning. His name was Juan. He no longer had a surname to be called by, nor an address to return to. His grey beard hung down to his chest, and the lines between his brows deepened the fatigue etched by time. His shoulders were slumped, fingers cracked, and his gaze was fixed far away. Juan no longer lived by the clock, but by the rising of the sun. If the sun rose, it meant he had survived another day. He had once been a different man, a carpenter. He had a daughter with a smiling face, like the ones in framed pictures. In his small workshop, he made toy cradles, and every evening he came home with a warm meal. But sometimes life turns upside down without warning. After losing his daughter in a car accident, everything inside Juan went silent. His wife blamed him. She left. Eventually, the workshop failed too, and in the end, no one remembered him. The streets erased not only his footprints, but also his past. But there was still one living thing in Juan's life: GUARDIÁN. A medium-sized stray dog with black fur and brown rings around his eyes. His coat had become matted over time, one of his ears drooped slightly, yet his gaze still carried a spark. Juan first saw him while picking through food scraps beside a trash bin. The air was cold. The loneliness was the kind that blankets the soul like morning fog. He heard a rustle. He turned around. Their eyes met. In the dog's eyes, Juan saw himself. Abandonment, hunger, and yet a flicker of undying hope. He broke the last piece of simit in his pocket and dropped half on the ground. The dog didn't approach right away. He stared for a long while. For a stray, he seemed almost too proud. Then, slowly, shyly, he took the piece of bread. From that day on, they were never apart. Juan named him Guardian. "My guardian," he said, "you watch over my loneliness." From that moment on, the streets were no longer so silent. Every morning, Guardian waited for Juan to wake, gently wagging his tail and licking his face. Then they would walk together, scouting trash bins, memorizing where shopkeepers left scraps. Sometimes they rested on a park bench, sometimes they found shade by an old factory wall. People knew them, but only through the corners of their eyes. Some offered a piece of bread, others looked the other way, but their world was small, and it was enough for them.
Guardian was not just a dog.
He was the last warmth inside Juan. At night, he curled up on Juan's chest, as if listening to his heartbeat until morning. No matter how harsh the cold, he would cover Juan with his body. Sometimes, Juan would whisper, "If it weren't for you, this city would be too quiet, too dark." The dog would simply tilt his head and look. He never barked, never complained. Juan lived on the streets, but he never believed he would die alone, because every morning a friend waited by his side, and that friendship was slowly laying the ground for a bitter night yet to come.
Chapter 2.
Brotherhood of Cold Nights. December in Cordoba always began with a deeper kind of silence. The city's stone buildings absorbed the cold, and the walls began to look damp. Mornings were foggy, evenings humid and dark. People wrapped themselves in their coats, heads down, walking briskly, but the streets never forgot the homeless. Every winter, They revealed a new face to them, a merciless, sharp, and silent face. Juan knew this season well. It was his 5th winter on the streets, but each winter seemed harsher than the last. He could feel the cold deep in his bones now. The cracks on his hands healed more slowly, and the curve in his back bent a little further. But Guardián was still the same. The only difference the years had left on him were a few white hairs on the tips of his ears and paws that trembled slightly in the cold. Their days were all alike, but something seemed different in the last week of that December. The air had turned biting all of a sudden. Winds howled through the gaps between buildings, and at night the streetlights fractured their glow through the glass-like cold. That day, a bakery had left leftover pastries by the trash. It was a feast for Juan and Guardián. They sat together by a wall. Juan rubbed his hands and breathed into them. His fingers were covered in purplish lines. Guardián curled up beside him. Looking into Juan's eyes, he gently rolled a piece of pastry in his mouth. Juan smiled. "I'm glad you're here," he whispered. The dog rested his head on Juan's knee. As people passed them by, these two lonely souls sought warmth in each other. No cell phone rang in those moments, no news bulletin broke the silence, but something was changing in the sky. That night, the meteorological office issued a warning. A severe cold wave. Temperatures would drop below freezing. There was a risk of frost, even in the city center. But those who lived on the streets had no TV, no radio. Their barometer was the wind, the numbness in their toes, the chill of the walls, and the sudden absence of cats from the street corners. As night began to fall, Juan chose his spot, the usual one, near the entrance of the old post office where the wind hit a little less. He flattened a torn piece of cardboard on the concrete ground, spread his blanket over it. Once a child's duvet cover, still marked with faded star patterns. Guardián seemed uneasy, as if he could smell something in the air. He kept scanning the surroundings, dragging his nose across the ground. Juan placed a hand on his head. "It's nothing, my boy. We'll get through the night. As long as you're with me, nothing can happen." As the night wore on, the temperature dropped further. The wind had calmed, but a deadly, creeping cold settled in the air. The concrete wasn't just hard anymore, it was like ice. Juan wrapped himself tightly in the blanket, but it wasn't enough. His body began to tremble. Guardián curled into his chest. He tucked his hind legs under himself, resting his head over Juan's heart. After a while, Juan's voice became a soft murmur. "It's warm, isn't it?" The dog sighed without lifting his head. The temperature was -4 degrees Celsius. Most people were in their heated homes at that moment, windows closed, sipping tea, watching a film. But somewhere in the city, a man was trying to survive, clinging to the warmth of his dog. By 2 a.m., his voice was gone. His breathing had grown heavy, his eyes half open. Guardián was still on his chest. He hadn't moved. He just kept his ear pressed against Juan's heart, as if hoping to hear one more beat.
Chapter 3.
Farewell and Waiting. By morning, the first city buses had begun to run. A few street cleaners came out to sweep the sidewalks. They knew that corner well. Juan was always there, but this morning there was no movement. He lay completely still, like a body without life. They saw the dog first, curled tightly against his chest, not moving. He was trembling lightly. His eyes were open but empty. A faint whimper escaped his chest, just like someone mourning. Juan had died of hypothermia. Guardián was still there, still on his chest. As people approached, he growled. He wouldn't let anyone near him. When the workers came closer, he placed his paws over Juan's body. He was still trying to protect his master, but he could no longer keep him warm. A few days later, the animal rescue team took Guardian to a shelter. People cried when they saw the footage on social media. It made the front pages of newspapers, but the little dog wouldn't stop. He kept escaping the shelter, always returning to the same corner of the sidewalk. He would sit there for hours, then lay his head down without going anywhere. Maybe he could still smell him. Maybe he still had hope. Eventually, a kind-hearted couple adopted him. He had a warm home, a soft bed, but at night he always lay in front of the door. The family brought him to bed, stroked his fur, gave him toys, but he always waited at the same spot. Because he had made a promise. If you never leave me, then I will never leave you.